We're going to put routers 3 and 4 back in area 23 in a moment. I had taken area 23 out of the mix before our LSA discussion in lab. I'm going to show you a couple options with the default information originate command, definitely CCNA material. And with this scenario that we're going to have with routers 3 and 4, I'm going to show you one little bonus thing. Take about a minute, maybe two. Really come in handy for you. You don't have to watch it if you don't want to, because stub routing is not going to be on your CCNA exam. But I'd like you to see this, and it's a great technique. It's a good tie-in to what we're talking about with the default information originate default information originate command to begin with. So let's go ahead and get our adjacency back here between routers 3 and 4. We're going to put them in area 23. We're going to leave router 2 out of the mix here. Okay, great. I already had it on that side. Still had it on there. So let's check it. And there's our adjacency, and everything is just lovely. So here is the deal. Let's go down to router 4 and look at our routing table. Okay, so we've got a couple of routes in here, of course. We've got a route to router 1's loop back, to router 2's loop back, to router 3's loop back, and to our NBMA network. Now, what do these all have in common? And if I added 20 more networks to this, to routers 1, 2, and 3, what would they all have in common as far as router 4 goes? They'd all have that same next hop IP address. And this is the kind of thing we want to watch and get rid of, because you're going to have scenarios like this where you could have a router that has 75 entries, but if it's out there on the edge of your network, the next hop IP address is going to end up being the same. So we need to know a couple of techniques on how to generate some static routes, or some default routes, that is. And the first one we're going to use is the default information originate command. We're going to go out to router 3 and take care of this. And what we're going to do is this default information command. There is a little dash there that's really easy to forget. Control distribution of default information. That's pretty formal. Let's see what happens. Well, you only have one option after that, originate. We're distributing a default route. And we have always metric type and route map. So we'll just go ahead and create. You can see the CR there. So this is a legal command. And what default information originate does is it allows this router to propagate, a default route. So if we go down to router 4, we don't see anything. So we know OSPF is very quick, and we're on broadcast on top of that, so we know the convergence is very fast. So we're not getting a default route from router 3. The reason that we're not getting it is that router 3 does not have a default route to advertise. It's got to have one if you use the default information originate command. If you want it to distribute a default route, it's got to have one. Makes perfect sense, right? Well, we can actually get around that. I'm going to remove this command and then go at it again. Originate. See the always option there? Always actually means always advertise a default route even if you don't have one in your own routing table. Now that seems like it would be against the rules, right? We're going to distribute a default route that we don't have, but the default information originate always option lets us do that. So let's see what happens over here on router 4. And it's not there yet, but let's give it a few seconds. I was over there pretty quick. And there it is. Bingo. Notice this is marked as an OE2 route. That's in your routing table codes, and that just means it's an external route, and we will get into that more in your NP studies. We have to draw the line somewhere. But you'll notice again, there's your default route 000/0. It's got an AD of 110 as we'd expect, and there's your next hop IP address. Now notice though that it doesn't get rid of the entries you have in that table. It's a very important distinction. We're seeing two important distinctions here. First off, the difference between default information originate and default information originate always, and also that while this command is allowing router 3 to distribute a default route, it's not getting rid of the other entries in router 4's table. So what I'm going to show you here is a little beyond the scope of the NA. So if you're strictly interested in that, you can stop watching this one now, but a little bonus material, because I know everybody wants to see this. Let's do router OSPF1. We're going to take that command out. And I'm going to put this information originate no command right after that without the always, because sometimes when you do no default information originate always, it just goes back in the config as, oh, okay, he meant just get rid of the always. Well, I want to get rid of the entire command. What we're going to do is make this actually a total stub area, because we're in a situation where router 4 is by itself, it's on the edge of the network, it only has one possible next hop IP address, and what we want to do is say, okay, we're knocking that table down to nothing. Only thing I want in router 4's table is a default route, and that's it. So let's take care of that. And this is how you make an area a total stub, which is what I'm going to do in this case. It's area 23 stub. That's a legal command by itself. What I'm actually going to do is no summary, and now you're really knocking everything down. You're saying the only thing I want in router 4's routing table is that default route. So I'm going to go ahead and fire that command up, and you can see or saw very quickly that our adjacency actually went down. Let me scroll over there a bit. So I like to make the font big every once in a while. There we go. Full to down. Adjacency forced to reset is what we're seeing. But on a broadcast network, we should see that come back pretty quickly. But we're down to 15 seconds on the dead time on router 4, so that's not necessarily good. Matter of fact, it's necessarily bad. So as soon as this drops, let's go ahead and run a debug IP OSPF hello and see why that is the case. And we got our full to now, we dropped our adjacency, but let's let a hello come in here. And you can see here's another great debug output. You know, we've used this one a couple times in this part of the course. The area is fine, the timers are fine, everything else is fine, but notice it says mismatched stub/transit area option bit. That means exactly what you think it means. When you've got the stub command on one router in the area, you have to set it on the other routers in the area or the adjacency drops. This is enough for me to do on router 4, area 23 stub, because it's router 3 that's actually the border router, and that's where you need that little no summary option. So I suspect that adjacency is going to come back. Yeah, that was fast, full, and there we go. So we've got show IP OSPF neighbor, and now let's go in and see that's going to clear itself up. So let's go in and do a show IP route and check that out. Pretty cool stuff. When you make a route in area total stub like we just did, and again it's bonus material beyond the NA, but I wanted you to see this. Default information originate and originate always. That's important to know because there will be specialized situations where you want to advertise a default route even if the router you're on doesn't have one. But what this allowed us to do by making this area a total stub is knocking all those OSPF routes out inter-area and intra-area and just saying, hey, I just want one default route and that's it. And the thing is, can we still ping those networks that we took out? Yeah, we can. We're pinging all of the other loopbacks right now. And the great thing is we knocked the OSPF routing table down to one entry and one entry only. So some good bonus material there for you. Again, default information originate, you're definitely going to see on your exam total stub OSPF configuration. You won't, but it's a good config to know. I will see you on the very next video with some more OSPF labs.